Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on MisplacedStraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today is making a return trip to the site, but this time it's to talk about his role in two of the biggest news stories in music. First, he spent well over 40 years alongside the legendary Todd Rundgren, who has finally been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And also, he and Todd are intertwined with the greatest success of a man we recently lost far too soon, the incredible Jim Steinman. Please welcome back Kasim Sulton. Welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. It's good to be back. It's good to speak to you again.
You as well. And let's start off with the great news. Todd's induction into the Rock Hall.
Yes.
From your perspective, were you surprised that it finally happened?
Slightly, to be perfectly honest with you. I was a little surprised. Todd is very vocal about his sort of indifference at that particular institution. But you know, I don't want to disparage anyone or anything. I'm just saying that my experience with Todd has been like, hey, you know, whatever. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm fine too. I think that the fans were very, very pleased at the induction, and I know Todd's comment to the press and media was, "I'm happy for the fans. It's been they've been waiting a long time for this."
Have you had the chance to talk to him at all? And you know,
I sent him a congratulatory email, but I have not spoken to him. I think that knowing Todd as well as I do, he's all about, look, you know, are you asking me a question or are you just congratulating me? Well, if you're just congratulating me, you know, thanks. But if you're asking me a question, then I will take the time to answer you. Yeah.
So, I mean, going back a bit, how did you first meet Todd?
I was kicking around New York City. I was playing piano with a girl by the name of Cherry Vanilla, who was David Bowie's publicist at Main Man Records. That was David Bowie's original record label. And management company. I met a bunch of really cool people through Cherry, like Michael Kamen, Nick Ronson, Lee Childers, Tony Zanetta, all these kind of underground, behind-the-scenes New York people. And one of my best friends was someone who was very, very successful on Staten Island, lived on Staten Island with Earl Slick. I just happened to go to his house one night to take him to the airport, and when I walked into his dad's house, he said, "You feel like playing bass with Todd Rundgren?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess. I don't know for sure. I would imagine that would be fun." And he said, "Okay, when we get to JFK, call Michael Kamen up. He will recommend you to Roger Powell, the keyboard player, who is putting together the auditions for the band." I got to JFK. I think it was like a dime or 20 cents to make a phone call from a payphone at that time. And now I'm dating myself. And Michael said, "I don't know you as a bass player. I know you as a piano player." I said, "Michael, my main instrument is bass guitar." He said, "Oh, okay, I'll recommend you." So he recommended me. The next day, I was on an Adirondack Trailways bus from Port Authority up to Woodstock, New York, to audition for the band. Todd had just was coming home from a trip, a mopeding trip across India. The next day, we ran over some material with myself, Roger Powell, and Willie Wilcox, the drummer. And Todd came in the next day. I auditioned for Todd and went home. I didn't think that I would get the job. I thought that it was just a really good experience for me to do that. And the day after that, I got a phone call from Roger Powell saying, "Welcome to Utopia." So that's how that happened.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is my history, yes.
Yeah. Now, do you have what's your gut feeling on whether or not A, Todd will show up, and B, whether or not he'll play? And if he does, will you be there with him?
Well, I can answer one of those questions. Mm-hmm. If he shows up, he will play. Mm-hmm. We are due to be on the road during the induction ceremony. It's in, I think it's at the end of October of this 30th. Year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 30th, and we are scheduled to be on tour at that time. Now, if I was I don't want. I really don't want to bet and say I bet he will or I bet he won't. I think it's completely up in the air whether or not he will be able to attend. And if he does, I am sure he will perform. I don't know if I would be there. You have to remember that my work with Todd at this juncture is about his solo work. My work with him as a band member in Utopia was completely different than his solo work. Mm-hmm. It's two separate entities. So I would love to be there if the stars align and he decides that he's going to have band members there. That would be wonderful. But I don't expect to be there.
Mm. Yeah, and it's funny. I've been lucky enough to attend every induction since 2012, and I'll be there at this one. Uh-huh. And there have been a lot of artists that kind of echo Todd's sentiments. And yeah, this is great for the fans, but it is what it is. And once they get there, you almost see the change on their face. You see how just the moment kind of hits them and washes over them, and it really becomes something special. So I hope we get to experience that with Todd.
I hope so. I really hope so. I think that for all of his kind of puffing up and saying, I really don't care. It's like not important. I think he really does believe that. But I think that in the moment, you're like, you know what? I'm finally being recognized by a body of my peers for my work, and it's pretty special. And I'm sure that I think deep down inside, he really says, okay, I'm vindicated,
Definitely. And now moving on to something a little bit different. Unfortunately, on April 19th, the world lost the great Jim Steinman, who's been a huge influence to me. You and Todd were so heavily intertwined in Jim's legacy and Bat Out of Hell. And when we spoke last, you told the story of how you never really thought the record would amount to much, and you were surprised when you heard it on the radio. Yeah. But when it comes to Jim, I mean, what were your initial thoughts on him, and working with him and the music he created?
I really didn't know what to make of him, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought that he was very, very talented. He was very, I don't want to say opinionated, but he knew what he wanted to hear. He knew how he wanted it to sound, and he knew what he wanted the end result to be. And I think that speaks a lot to his vision on his own music, for his music. So Jim was a visionary, Jim, prior to 1977, 78, when the record came out, or even when we were doing the record in 1976, who would have thought to put a play-by-play by Phil Rizzuto in the body of an 8-minute song, and then have it make complete perfect sense. Yeah. Now, when we did that, when we recorded that track, there was that long section in the middle, the groping, for lack of a better term, the groping section. No one, I didn't know what was going to happen in there. No, maybe Todd knew because Todd was producing the record. Yeah. But I think that myself, Max Weinberg, and Roy had no clue as to what was going to happen in that section. But Jim knew that they were going to do a play-by-play. And by the way, they're going to get a famous baseball player to call it, who as just as an aside, after the fact, didn't appreciate it. So was a devout Catholic, and when he heard his play-by-play, in relation to a teenage boy and girl in the backseat of a car, he was not happy. In any case, that's getting completely off the subject. Jim was really brilliant when it came to doing stuff that was out of the box.
Yeah,
that's outside. Sure. It was outside the norm. It was not what you would expect from a 3-minute pop song. And he became hugely successful by being true to his own vision.
And after that session was over, did you have any contact with Jim throughout your career? Did you ever work with him again?
Of course. Yeah, I worked with Jim many times, very, very closely. Celine Dion, his solo record, Pandora's Box. Yep. I did work with him on the Bat Out of Hell, the musical. And so Jim and I remain very, very, very good friends throughout his career.
And just kind of looking back on all he did, and I mean, I don't think anybody has ever encompassed just the multiple types of genres, from people like Meatloaf to people like Celine Dion and Air Supply and Barry Manilow, and then, back to the harder rock stuff. What do you think, that Jim's legacy in music in general is going to be?
Well, I think that Jim occupies a pretty special place in the annals of songwriters. I think he's one of the top handful. I don't want to say a half dozen or a dozen. I don't know how many, but he has had a huge amount of success with his material and a slew of artists like Barry Manilow, like Air Supply, like Bonnie Tyler, like Meatloaf, Celine Dion. And so I think that there is some statistic that Jim falls in a very special place in terms of success and record sold and chart position of songwriters. I don't think that there's a lot of people that enjoy that same success that Jim has had.
Yeah, and for me personally, he's probably one of my top 2 or 3 favorite songwriters in music. So I'm with you on that. And unfortunately, Jim isn't the only loss we've had recently. While we're talking, would you like to say a few words about former Utopia keyboardist Ralph Schuckett, who also recently passed away?
Yeah, Ralph. We lost Ralph at the beginning of April, and I worked with Ralph pretty closely on a few projects over the years. Ralph and I, while we were not like close, bosom buddies, Ralph was always extremely kind and generous with his time with me. Brilliant musician, arranger, producer, songwriter, and he is missed by a number of people. He touched a lot of people's lives, and he will be sorely missed. As a matter of fact, it's funny enough, I just got an email about a memorial service for him at the beginning of June, a Zoom memorial. Probably about 50 people going to be on it, and I'm lucky enough to be included in that. But Ralph was a doll, and I loved every second that I worked with him. I loved working with him.
And kind of bringing it back to some brighter topics here. We mentioned how the world is kind of opening up again. you were in the middle of a solo tour that I was able to catch right before the world shut down. I know you've played a couple of dates around here in the Northeast through the pandemic, a couple outdoor things.
Yes.
You planning on resuming your tour anytime soon, or is it just going to kind of keep being these one-offs and places that you can play?
You know, there are a number of one-offs for the rest of the summer. And then starting in September, I'll be doing a few more shows. Instead of like 1 or 2 a month, I'll be doing more like 3 or 4 a month. I have a new record coming out in September.
Oh, great.
That I'm very excited about. And I have a radio show that's on every Sunday night on Woodstock Radio, WDST, and online at radiowoodstock.com. It's Sunday nights at 7 p.m. It's called It's My World, and welcome to it. We're working on a podcast, and there's just a ton of stuff going on. So I have to be out there really soon, just because this is what I do, and you know, I am very lucky to be able to do what I do and have done it for so long. So I'm very, very, very excited about all the things that I have going on, and I'm looking forward to the world opening back up, especially in terms of people at venues by October.
Definitely. Well, you know, hopefully we can talk again when it gets a little closer to your record coming out.
I would love that.
Get the word out about that. But Kevin, thanks so much for taking some time on short notice today to talk about all of this.
It's my pleasure, Jeff. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. And hopefully we'll be able to see you in Cleveland with Todd in October. So,
is it Cleveland this year, not New York?
Nope, this year's back in Cleveland. It's at the arena where the Cavaliers play. They're using the big place this time, not the small theater that they usually use. So it'll be an interesting atmosphere. So hopefully we can see you there.
Okay, well, great, Jeff. Please send my best to your wife, and we'll speak again soon.
You got it. Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Yep.